John, thanks so much for jumping onto the scooter space, mate. Today, what we'll be talking about is how a service background, how a customer service background can actually, you know, bring benefits into the scooter world with some of the soft skills that you actually pick up. But before we sort of jump into it, are you okay just to give everyone a bit of an introduction to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Johnny. I'm head of cybersecurity at Sykes and part of the wider Forge Holiday group as well. I've been here for about 8 months now, which simultaneously feels like 8 years and 8 minutes. It's really good fun. Prior to that, I worked in security operations for an oil and gas refinery, which was very different kettle of fish, very different tech stack, very different threat concerns. But I thoroughly enjoyed, the difference in vertical, the different tech stack, the different threat concerns, and yeah, like it's been a great 8 months, and it's been a great few years cracking on in cybersecurity.
Okay, so, but yeah, like we've alluded to, you've not always been in security. You had you had a life before that. So,
Yeah.
jumping into it then. So, well, firstly, how did we even come about with this topic? Because when we were throwing about ideas, and we were kind of going before your life in security, and you said that your previous life, in some way, set yourself up quite nicely for it. So, what did you actually sort of mean by that then?
Well, it's interesting actually. People always talk about falling into cybersecurity. I think we joked about it initially. You speak to so many people who say, "Oh, well, I just sort of fell into cybersecurity." It wasn't the case for me. I deliberately targeted cybersecurity as a career that I wanted to move into. It was about 6 years ago now that I started that journey. And well, when I started that journey, I was a bar manager, and for the sort of 4 years prior to that, I'd been a bar manager. Now that was the career that I fell into. I studied law at university. Got sort of a graduate scheme around sales and recruitment, like yourself, Nick, and then it didn't really fly for me. It was like, there was a different set of skills that I wanted to bring to the table. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went on a ski holiday when I was doing my graduate scheme, and I kind of just went, "Oh, this is the best thing I've ever done. Skiing's amazing." So I came back, packed the job in, and then went out and did two and a half seasons, out in the French Alps, working in hospitality. First season chalet host, second couple of seasons as a bar manager, and just naturally between the seasons, started doing it back home as well. And then when I came back after the final season, it was like, okay, well, this is actually something I really enjoy.
Yeah.
I'm going to just take a bit of time rather than try and rush and pick a career arbitrarily. I'm going to research it. I'm going to find something that interests me, that I think's got legs, that I think's got good progression opportunity, and target it a bit more proactively then. But for now, this is something I really enjoy, and something that I've got good opportunities for the short term in. So I'm gonna stick around and do a bit more hospitality. And then as I've come out of that, so it's about 5-6 years ago now, and journeyed through security to end up becoming head of cybersecurity, getting into security leadership. It's amazing how many parallels have started to creep out, and actually skills that I have developed as a leader, have started developing as a bar manager, and have become, very useful within my security journey as well.
Okay. So, working in this background then, because I'm definitely speaking for myself as well, going through university and whatnot, and I think a lot of people, when they're sort of getting their part-time jobs, a lot of the time it is like a, customer service sort of background, boys, like you say, definitely when you're sort of at university. Sort of what sort of soft skills are you picking up there? And then secondly, what sort of soft skills are you picking up there that are beneficial towards the cyber industry?
I think, do you know what? Like, I think there's a reticence around just speaking to people and engaging with people, and it's not across the board. And certainly from a leadership point of view, a lot of the peers that I speak with in the industry, they don't necessarily have that reticence. But within my team and within that customer facing environment, there's a complete disparity between like when you're on the bar, you just go and you chat to someone, you go and strike up a conversation. It was kind of expected, it was just part of the job. Whereas I think a lot of the times security teams, they'll look for alternative routes as opposed to saying, right, I'm just going to go and strike up a conversation. I'm going to go and have, and see if I can fix this, almost organically as opposed to technically, rather than, that whole journey around, okay, right, let's follow this thread. A lot of the times there's been, certainly from an alert point of view, you can get to the root of the cause very quickly by just making sure that you pick an appropriate forum to go and have a conversation and find out what's actually going on. But I think more than anything, it's even, like just down to like the vulnerability management side of things as well. I don't like, chucking stuff over the wall, as they say. It's, we've got these alerting systems that said, okay, we found this vulnerability. It's not us who engage with the remediation. So rather than just chucking something over the wall, it's always about, okay, we're adding value, engage with the people that are going to be doing it. Can we help them? Can we assist them? And having the skill about building those relationships and the customer focus side, viewing those different teams as a customer as opposed to just saying, no, you have to do it, this is the time frame, immediately trying to draw a line in the sand, actually trying to help, trying to provide a service as part of that has been very useful for us and has definitely helped engagement with us as being fairly new team in Sykes as well.
Okay, so like you say, there is a lot of crossovers then between the two industries. Would you say that, putting just service aside for a second, is there any other sort of sector, do you think, that kind of lends itself well to security, or do you just think that security is quite all encompassing and thus it is quite we can sort of have a lot of people in the industry? Because personally, I speak to a lot of different people on a daily basis, and they're all quite different. Now, I'm going to make a very, very narrow-minded comment about developers now, and I'm putting that prerequisite in there. But sometimes when I speak to developers, they're a little bit of the same. They're a little bit sort of like not the most chatty, but clearly they're just happy with what they do. And that's me speaking to I've spoken to about 6 developers. That's it.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, cyber's quite varied. So do you think the industry lends itself to that?
Well, it's just security as opposed to developers,
just security as an industry. Do you just think that it's quite the soft skills that it kind of lends itself to it all?
I think it benefits from the soft skills massively, and I read a book, Christian Espinoza, about, it's called Smartest Person in the Room, and he nails a couple of the points quite well actually. And maybe something you could speak to developers. I think I've been very lucky with the people that I've interacted with, and I've always found that I've interacted with people who are quite engaged and quite keen to be engaged with security, but also there are other aspects of their work. You meet a whole variety, but there are certain tropes or certain stereotypes, and certainly across tech, I think one of the things that this book talks about is that need to be right, and to sort of know the technical and be the most technical and have that technical response and be the smartest person in the room. It was actually being comfortable not knowing and asking the right questions and working out what the business objectives and working out what people want to do and want to achieve and where the risks are, and engaging with a little bit more of a little bit less of a technical conversation around these things has definitely benefited me from a security perspective. I think that engagement and that overall desire to understand what's going on around you, as opposed to feeling the need to know all the answers, is absolutely essential. And for anybody working in security, I think being comfortable not having all the answers is a problem that we're working on, and part of that is engagement and feeling relaxed asking these questions. But I think there's other skills and there's other stuff that come from, it's not just about the engagement, it's from a service perspective, and a lot of people on the other side of the fence within security who provide a service will know, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to sort of keep the client happy, and that's something that I really benefited from, just viewing as an internal team, just viewing the other people around me as a client that I have to keep happy and deliver for, as opposed to being somebody who comes in and says no, we're not doing it like that, we're going to do it like this. So, okay, what do you want to do? Okay, this is how we're going to do it, but more securely, and then building on that and building through that, because the fewer times you say no, the more people will listen when you do say no. And I probably count on one hand the amount of times I've really said, no, that's not something that we're going to do. Certainly, maybe because it's still fairly early days. But for me in Sykes, there's been, probably a few more of those times when I've had to say no, in previous roles, like when I worked in oil and gas. But it's all about finding a solution, and that's where you have to have the knowledge, because you can't help find a solution. You can't add the value if you don't do the work in the background to make sure you know what the options are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I completely agree. And so what would you sort of say then? What would you say is more stressful? Because I remember I worked in Frankie and Benny's, my first ever job, and then I actually I actually really enjoyed my time at View when I was working there
Yeah.
in college. But when it just my first year of college, I was £3.71 working on the bar at Frankie and Benny's, and I was just
You're giving your age away there a bit, mate. Like, it was £3. That must have been way back then.
yeah, well, do you know what? Like, yeah, I am creeping there now. Like, so I'm 27 now, but like that was when I was 17. But
Gonna
so
say,
still alright. It's on the right
that
side
can't
of
have
30.
been. Is it that long? Like, surely that wasn't minimum wage within our
This is I don't know the
time.
legality because I was on a shift 5 till D, and like
Oh,
I look
really?
back now and I'm like that's not right. Like when it's not busy, they make me clock off at the bar and then clock back on when it is busy. I was too young to question it. Anyway, regardless, I was so rubbish at the job, but like what it taught me was the fact that like it was just like this new environment where it was just like it was fast paced and it was just like all this going on and you got to deal with that, you got to deal with that, you got to deal with that. So I found that stressful, sometimes more stressful than my job right now. But like, what I'm gonna say is like, what is more stressful, the service industry or the security industry, or is it situational?
It took me a long time. It took me ages to get to a point where I was like, okay, right, this is more stressful than being a bar manager. It was probably only in the last role that I had in oil and gas where I was like, okay, no, okay, there's pressure on here. This is more stressful. But really prior to that, even sort of building up, so like doing slightly more senior, like getting towards the management side of cybersecurity as opposed to sort of the analyst side of cybersecurity. Prior to that, a lot of the time, there was pressure, but it wasn't the same. There wasn't the same intensity around the time pressure. Even in an instant-based environment where there is a time factor and you've got to make quick decisions. You could go under. And I worked in a busy bar, and I loved it because you're always 3-4 deep at the bar. You're taking about 5 different orders at one time. You're making cocktails, you're making milkshakes, you're pouring pints, you're doing a lot. You got to layer everything up around. You got like real time and motion decisions in a split second. And when I was managing that, I also had to deal with the stocks and making sure that we were maintaining GP and that we had and I was meeting certain targets and numbers. So there was that minute by minute pressure, and as well as that week by week and month by month pressure. And it honestly took ages. And you'd think it's a no-brainer from a stress perspective, but it was addictive. It was addictive stress. It was really, and you're just always moving. You're always until that service stops, until you get that last orders in. Quieter days, but a lot of the times it was incredibly busy. Whether you were doing the dispense to serve the entire restaurant, or you're taking the orders at the middle, and like getting you'd have moments where it was like you take one person's, and it's a very British thing. You take one person's order, and they'd give you that whatever they were having, and you take another person's order and say, oh, hang on, I've ordered it. And you kind of have to explain that, no, I'm going to do all of your drinks at the same time, because that's how I can serve all of you as quickly as possible, rather than taking your drink. Oh, you want 2 pints, making them 2 pints, and then you take the next person's order and they want 2 pints. You might as well just get them all working at the same time, take the payment separate. Oh, you want a margarita? You want a margarita? All right, brilliant. I'm going to shake both of them in the same. And it's kind of like that. I've used that quite a lot, just that layering. And those are, we used to get trained with. I mean, the training that we had was brilliant. And honestly, like from like a corporate, you have all these like corporate training days, but we had some of the most passionate trainers who worked at that company on the bar. Some of the anecdotes and some of the motivational stories that they used to tell you, and the way that they used to explain how you move and how you do things have stayed with me to this day. Really, there were some brilliant ones. But like one of the things you always got trained on was, you take all of those orders because one person's going to have this, one person's going to have that, And it's the time in motion. It's like if you're bringing up tequila because you're making a margarita, you don't want to put it back down. You want to make sure that you do both sets of drinks with one motion of your hand being up. You don't want to put that going on because that's wasted time.
Okay.
It's all about every split second, and
Yeah.
like almost like marginal gains every single second that you save, because if your hand's up, it doesn't go back down until you definitely don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And you've taken all of the orders that you need, and sort of layering up all of those capabilities and responsibilities into one go has helped me massively when it comes, weirdly, at the complete other end of the time frame spectrum when it comes to building my strategy. And when I've been building initiatives, it's okay, right? So we need to improve our vulnerability management. So I'll look, okay, well, what can we, like, what do I need? What are the dependencies for me to deliver an effective vulnerability management program that will help me deliver an effective risk management program as well? And looking at the overlaps and dependency. Okay, right. Okay, so asset management is going to help me deliver vulnerability management, which is going to help me deliver cyber risk management, which is going to help me deliver detection and response. So the parallels, these little dependencies that sit across multiple initiatives, and it comes, like, I look back and I reflect and said that mindset I can trace back to the training saying, don't get that margarita up if you've got four. Don't get that tequila up if you've got four margaritas on. You better not make four separate margaritas. You make them all in one go with that tequila up in one go, because you've got to save those seconds. And it's helped. And honestly, speed of delivery for initiatives. Just even though it's not about rushing it, but it's about especially with, because I've typically worked with smaller teams, smaller resources, looking at layering it and finding where I can get, I don't use the term synergies, but where I can get multiple results out of one implementation. Okay, right, actually, if we get on top of our assets, if we get on top of our top 20s, if we get on top of the real critical things within our environment, I can knock off then 4 of the initiatives and start the process, or get some processes in place really quickly then. And it's funny because it feels like a long time ago now, but I think about what has made me good at that, and it's bartending. It's being bar manager that sort of helped me on that journey.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I really like that story, and I really like how it is that marginal gains, and it's just very indicative how, like, there is a lot of similarities across the sectors. Yes, the technicalities are obviously different, but even in, like, when you're working in bartending, you've still got goals, just like you do in security. It's all about how you get there. Just because one industry is technically a little bit different, we're all got to achieve success. Success is success at the end of the day. That's black and white. So I really like that little story. No, that's really cool. So obviously working in that sort of, that fast-paced environment day to day, because you're actually sort of like in a managerial position in security now, do you kind of look for that in the teams that you build? Are you kind of looking for someone that's come from a fast-paced environment, or is it something a little bit different? Like, what do you actually look for when building your teams then?
Honestly, it's the attitude and the passion, and that's that I think is absolutely critical. Especially if you're looking at the more junior, senior roles different, but still that's a consistent thing. Junior role through to senior role, attitude and passion for what you do is the critical skill set that I would always look for. I think with that, and the right, you got to have certain great matter, you've got to have certain capabilities and skills available ready, but certainly it's an industry where you don't stick around and you don't stay in it for very long if you don't have a passion for it. I used to work 60 hours a week, sometimes more, unsociable hours. You didn't stick in service if you didn't love service, and even then I didn't stick in service. I got out of it, but I still loved it. I'll pick up the odd disco shift occasionally, as we refer to it, just to get on the bar. Well, we did a pop-up bar on one of our floors yesterday for the operations guys at Sykes, because they're in super peak at the moment, and they were saying, "Oh, we're doing a pop-up bar. Does anyone?" And I was like, honestly, they barely finished the sentence before I was like, "Yeah, I'll go and bartend. I'll go and do that," because I just enjoyed it so much. So that passion for it is sort of, is that, again, it's so, like, passion for what you do such a transferable skill, you know, but like being able to stick at it even when it's not as enjoyable, and stick, you know, just that resilience that, you know, I built and developed as working on a bar, because it was sometimes very thankless work.
Yeah.
It wasn't all enjoyable, but being able to sort of maintain, you know, sort of balance that passion and that resilience together is definitely something I look for. And I would see somebody who's had time in service as somebody who's demonstrated those things, because based on my personal experience, that's a couple of the key requirements of being able to do a good job in that role with.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, and my own experience with sort of obviously working for service is you learn a few tough lessons as well. You know what I mean? It's not the most glamorous of roles. Yes, there's elements where it's like you say, like working in a bar, you can have the occasional pint here and there. Definitely, I get that. But yeah, you also have to, you know, deal with, you know, angry customers, rude customers who aren't necessarily speaking coherently. Let's just put that in very PG terms.
Yeah.
So like, what sort of
I think that's a different podcast. I could tell you some stories on that one, Nick, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that's for this podcast.
Might have to wait till the watershed's
Yeah.
on, yeah. But no. So what sort of tough lessons did you learn? Like, is it just being able to speak to people who are not speaking nicely to you? Is it the long hours? What is there anything else? What are some of the tough life lessons that you like?
You know,
It was tough at the time, but thanks for that.
it's not giving into like you know, have been historically quite a reactive, impulsive person.
Okay.
You know, I can tell you one thing: when people are shouting at you and they've had a few too many drinks, you learn very quickly not to give in to those impulses.
Yeah.
And be reactive. I think it's you know, and it's something I still work on and will always reflect on. But I think the less, you know, real leaders, that they're just not impulsive, they're not reactive, they're thought through, they are deliberate about what they do and why they're doing it. They're looking 3 years down the line, not 2 minutes down the line. It's kind of like really sort of converse to what I've just been talking about, and that fast-paced day-to-day operational impact. Slowing down and stepping away from that when I first transitioned into IT and security, that was a real change of pace for me. Getting used to that change of pace took a bit of learning, took a bit of, all right, okay, let's reconfigure how you think about things. Let's keep hold of this where it's useful. You know, when you do have like short, sharp, you know, progress cycles to work on, but let's make sure that we can do both. You know, both kinds of thinking. Let's make sure that we can do the fast-paced stuff and we can do the more deliberate, slow-paced stuff as well. But weirdly enough, the not reacting, not being impulsive was something that was a journey that I started on the bar, just because people will, you know, like I've had to cut a couple of people off. People don't like being cut off, because they're typically, because they've been cut off, they're pretty drunk, and their impulse control is not what it normally is. I expect. I had a fantastic regular base. Like the people that I served on a regular basis were lovely, and I didn't have loads of stories. I had some good stories when I worked in France. Again, probably for a different podcast, to be honest with you. You know, like some very reactionary people when you tried to cut off holiday goers. It's a different story, you know, because they don't live around the corner. They're going off to a completely different country at the end of the week, so that maybe they have slightly fewer inhibitions than even the amount that they've had to drink.
Definitely. No, I think that we'll need to do this second podcast just to kind of find out
Maybe it's something else I should be talking about.
Exactly. So pretty much one of my last questions then is what can the security industry learn from the service industry then? Is there something that you're thinking, oh, we'd actually really benefit from that, whether it's the pace or whether it's just something else? You know, what can we actually take from that as a lesson then?
It's I mean, it's interesting because I kind of look about, okay, well, what do I think has made me an effective security leader? And you know, I think I've got a lot to learn, and I've got a lot to continue to grow, and I always reflect and say, right, okay, what have I done well this week? What could I improve on? You know, I'm consistently saying, okay, what can get better? How do I get to become a better security leader? But I think about things that I feel I've done quite well, and it's the ability to affect change, deliver under pressure, you know, maintain, you know, a strict sort of program delivery. You know, okay, we're going to deliver this within this time frame. We're going to keep on top of these, but you know, building relationships And I think probably the consistent themes that tie them together has been, being action orientated, saying, right, perfection paralysis, I call it. Don't like, and I say to like that. If any of my team end up watching this, they'll probably roll their eyes. But I say, never sacrifice being good for the sake of being perfect. Like, there's so much good things that we can do, and I think you can wait around, especially in security. You can say, right, well, it's kind of like what I was saying before. It's like, well, we can't do an effective vulnerability management program because we don't have an effective asset management program. We need to wait on this before we start this. Whereas actually, you've typically got enough data and enough resource and enough capability to get something going and get something working quite quickly.
Yeah.
That's a big lesson, because leaning's cleaning, all of the, sort of standing around waiting for some, if you're quiet on the bar and you're waiting for somebody to come to you and you're taking it easy and you're chilling, I tell you, like, I mean, I probably would have said, as the bar manager, I would have said, come on, let's go get this, let's get it cleaned down. Probably did everybody's head in with that approach. But yeah, like, you've got to find, you're always in fifth gear, you're always like finding things to do. So that action, and sort of let's get something done, let's start doing things, let's start moving things in the right direction mindset, I think is a big thing that I've brought from, my previous life as a bar manager into cybersecurity. But again, like, and almost cliched a bit, but the communication, being able to effectively communicate what you want to do, why you want to do it, and the benefits that are going to come out of doing it that way. Work at an operational level, they work at a tactical level, and they work at a strategic level. That ability to communicate what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how you're going to get there. It just generates buy-in, it generates engagement, and that's where I think we could definitely look at, other industries. Even like if you look at the service side of cybersecurity, the way that they engage, sales. If you look at, customer service in general, the way that they engage with people to find out what it is that they really want to do it's a fundamental part of communication. I spoke about the trainers before, and one of the anecdotes that one of the guys, so James Passmore, his name was, and Rick Warrior was the other trainer. I'm name dropping them, but I'm sure they wouldn't mind. But they would just have such a good name, that, isn't it, Rick Warrior? Like, it doesn't get much better than that. But like, I remember James Passmore. He told a story, and it was just like, and it really resonates with me to this day. And it was it's a story of two prime ministers. The story of a journalist who attended like a prime minister's dinner with each of these different prime ministers. One of them was William Gladstone, and one of them was Benjamin Disraeli. And this reporter, he did like a summary of his experience. So he went for dinner with William Gladstone first, and he came out of the dinner, and in his report, when he reflected on the dinner, he said, I went to this dinner, and I just think William Gladstone is the most impressive, exciting, and engaging person that I've ever met in my entire life. He was the life and soul of the party. Everybody wanted to speak to him. Everybody wanted to know about him. And he just was the centre of attention and the life and soul of everything at the dinner. And I heard that part and said, okay, that's cool. That's something to aspire to, maybe. And then you tell the second part of the story, which is that he went for dinner with Benjamin Disraeli. And when he came out of the dinner with Benjamin Disraeli, he said that I felt like I was life and soul of the party, that I was the centre of attention, that I was the most interesting person there, and that I had brought a lot of things to the table. And it really sort of changed my view of, how you should lead and how you should be an engaging person. It's not about what you can do. It's not about what you can you can show people and how amazing you are and how fantastic you can be. It's about how you engage with people and find, like, just asking people questions, finding out about them, understanding what makes other people tick. Ever since I sort of heard that anecdote, I've really just gone, right, oh, that's the way to approach these things. And that humility to be able to ask those questions is something that I think is absolutely crucial to cybersecurity leadership.
Perfect. No, that's some brilliant points there, Johnny. And if anyone has got anything that, if they've kind of come from this background that they'd like to add to that, or would like to dispute anything that Johnny might have said, or anything like, or even if you've been the drunk guy at the bar yelling at Johnny, I want to hear from you in the comments as well. So yeah. Johnny, once again, thanks so much for jumping onto the security space. If anyone's got any questions for him, I'll be sure to put his information down below in the comments. But once again, thanks for joining us on the podcast, mate.